My wife called me that Friday morning in a panic, asking me to come home immediately. I left the family business, which my father had entrusted to me and my brother, because I felt something was wrong. Beth Tate, a stay-at-home mother who had never worked outside our marriage, only reached out to me at work for significant matters, so I knew this was serious. I was concerned that something might have happened to one of our teenage daughters at school, hoping it wasn't as grave as her call suggested. Both our daughters were very athletic, so I wondered if it could be a sports injury. My daughters were my life, both growing into beautiful young women, just like their mother. We ran the largest electrical company in the state. I handled commercial projects while my brother managed residential ones. Since taking over, we had more than tripled our volume each year for the past 6 years. My mother was immensely proud of us for continuing my father's legacy. Last year, our company achieved a milestone, making $5 million net for the first time in its over 50-year history. In the 9 years since our father's passing, we had built the business into a very successful enterprise, valued at around $20 million. As the oldest, John was made president by our mother, who retained 52% of the shares. My brother and I each held 24%, a setup to ensure our mother's financial security. After my father's death, my mother insisted I manage her personal investments. I shifted her portfolio from conservative to aggressive, yielding excellent results. When I arrived home, I was shocked to find movers packing up our belongings. Beth was standing by the road next to a 2020 model car I had purchased for her. She was leaving me for good, and her daughters had already been relocated without my knowledge or permission. She had kept them out of school to avoid them witnessing our breakup. It was clear she had orchestrated this to prevent any discussion with our daughters. "I'm sorry, James, but I've fallen out of love with you and am in love with someone else," she said, handing me the divorce papers. "You don't need to know who he is because it doesn't matter now. I've already filed for divorce." She wanted our last contact as a married couple to be brief. With that, she got into her car and drove away, marking the end of our 17-year marriage. Her departure was so abrupt that I didn't even have a chance to understand our daughter's feelings about the situation. I initially thought she might have met someone online, but the timing didn't fit with her being home and our daughter's awareness. As the movers took another piece of our daughter's furniture out of the house, I realized they must know where the furniture was going. I asked the driver, who kindly shared the delivery address with me. To my shock, the address was familiar. I tipped the driver generously and asked him to lock up after finishing. I drove back to our family business, making a stop to verify the address. What I discovered shattered my life. Not only had Beth left me, but she had done so for someone I knew well. Beth had been a constant presence in my life since her early teens, always tagging along with her brother and me. Wherever we went until her early teens, the three of us were inseparable. Her brother remained a good friend but was now a dedicated Marine, applying the morals, principles, and standards he was raised with to his career. I was proud of him and had deep respect for his commitment. As we progressed through our teens, we developed different interests and grew apart due to the usual changes in life. With my father's business booming, much of my spare time was spent helping out. Sometimes I would be receiving stock for upcoming jobs. When I asked my father why he hadn't used his own name for the family business, he said, "Tate & Sons or variations have been used too much and often don't last. I want this business to endure long after I'm gone. Parrish is your mother's maiden name, and gives it a sense of continuity." My older brother John, who was 3 years older than me, would take me along when delivering supplies to job sites. Because of his age, he earned a wage whereas I didn't. I used that time to learn as much as I could. After finishing the 10th grade, I joined an apprenticeship program to earn my electrical license and continued my education online, graduating from the 12th grade before completing my apprenticeship. I also started working towards a university degree in business management. The skills and knowledge I gained helped my father expand and grow his business. Meanwhile, John worked his way up the ladder, learning every aspect of the business through hands-on experience. He also picked up some less desirable habits along the way. What set us apart was that I began bidding for and winning small commercial contracts, often bringing projects in under budget. This approach, which my father and brother knew little about, significantly contributed to our growth. Our innovative methods earned us a reputation that far exceeded our expectations. My father used to say that I was the brains of the company and John was the brawn, and it took both of us to make the business successful. At 20 years old, living on my own, my brother called me one night, too drunk to drive home from a wild private party. He didn't want to risk getting caught by the police, so I went to rescue him. After helping him into the back seat of the car, I heard a voice behind me. "James, can I get a ride home with you? My date is passed out somewhere and if I don't get home my dad will be furious." Beth, at 17, had become a very beautiful young woman with mesmerizing blue eyes and an irresistible smile. She had an hourglass figure that attracted attention and long blonde hair. Her presence was captivating and I was struck by her beauty. Knowing her parents were protective and would be upset if they knew where she was, I agreed to give her a ride home. Her father, clearly concerned about his daughter being out late, was waiting when we arrived. I stopped at the edge of the road to hide my brother, then helped Beth out and walked her to her front door. Her father was ready to reprimand me for bringing her home late, but was relieved to find it was me. "Damn it, Beth, you should have told me your date was James. I wouldn't have worried." A week later, Beth visited my father's shop after work, asking me to take her to her senior prom, which was still 2 months away. I agreed to think about it and offered to drive her home. That evening, I took her out for dinner after confirming with her parents that it was okay since it was a school night. It took her most of the night to convince me of her interest, and it was another 2 weeks before I started taking her seriously. On prom night, we agreed to become exclusive. That was how it all began, and now the end of our marriage had come. About 20 minutes later, I arrived at our head office. I walked to John Tate's office, feeling both angry and determined, only to find the door closed. I asked his receptionist if my brother was in, and she said he was inside, speaking to someone on the phone and wanted privacy. I asked Mary, the receptionist, to come with me into my brother's office. "I need you to be a witness to what I have to say," I told Mary. She could see the intensity in my expression and nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Without warning, I kicked open the door to John's office, breaking it open. John looked up in surprise as we entered, abruptly ending his phone call and turning off his cell phone. In a fit of rage, I said, "You need to get this business appraised and find a way to buy my shares. You have as long as my divorce takes. Do you understand?" Mary's mouth fell open in shock. She had never seen me this angry. "What is this all about?" John asked, looking genuinely puzzled. "The movers gave me the address where they're delivering Beth's belongings. I saw my daughters leaving their new residence just as Beth pulled in," I explained. John stood silent, struggling to figure out how to handle the situation. "It wasn't intentional," John said coldly, showing no remorse. "She's just staying with me until she finds a place to live." "That's a lie," I replied. "Beth told me she was moving in with the man she's in love with. She even said she didn't need to tell me his name because it was none of my business anymore." John's face turned white and I could see he was at a loss for words. I knew him to be someone who avoided facing uncomfortable truths. Mary looked equally stunned, realizing John's behavior was far worse than she had expected. "How long have you two been involved?" I demanded. "On those afternoons when I covered for you, was it so you could be with her? I'll probably need to get tested for STDs considering some of the people you've been with." John's face went pale and he quietly said, "I don't think this is the right time or place for us to discuss this." "There's never a right time for something like this, John," I said firmly. "You should go to the bank and start discussing how to buy out my shares or put the business up for sale. We're done as business partners and as brothers." "There's got to be another option," John protested. "We can't afford to lose you. We need to talk this through when you've calmed down." In my anger, I picked up the phone on John's desk and dialed our mother, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. Thankfully, she wasn't out working with one of her charities and answered immediately. "Mom, I have some bad news," I said, my voice almost trembling with rage. "Today is my last day. I'm resigning from the family company effective immediately. I've told John he needs to find a way to buy out my shares as soon as possible." "What?" Mom replied, shocked. "You love that business. You're the rock that has made it what it is. What has happened to make you decide this? I think you should ask John when you find him. He might be at home because his secret lover is moving in today. I hear they're getting married as soon as her divorce is finalized. He's likely with her, showing his support, I said, beginning to calm down. I suggest you drive over to his place and introduce yourself to the woman he's been bragging about. You'll be meeting her as her future mother-in-law. I hung up the phone. John's rage was palpable, but he couldn't speak. I could see that if we weren't in the office, he would have tried to confront me physically. Mary, could you follow me to my office and ensure I don't take anything that belongs to the company? I want to avoid any claims that I was fired for theft. I need a signed statement confirming that I've returned all keys and only left with what we agreed is not company property, I said. John was growing increasingly angry as I made my expectations clear to the staff. Before leaving his office, I said, "Should I walk out backwards so you won't have a chance to betray me again, John? With what you and Beth have done, it would have been easier if you had just shot me." We walked back to my office where my receptionist was working. I said, "Joe, could you please come in and witness what is about to happen? I think Mary will appreciate having a witness for this." "James, what's going on?" Joan asked. "I've resigned because John has taken my wife and children from me," I said. I was served with divorce papers at home. The movers gave me the address where they were delivering Beth's belongings, and it turned out to be my brother's place. Both of our long-term executive assistants were in shock. They had been our steadfast support for years and I valued them greatly. Mary said, "Let's list everything James takes along with what keys he returns. We'll type it all up and make 5 copies. Joan and I will each keep a copy for safekeeping, so if any documents disappear, we can verify what happened today." Their trust in the process showed me just how much they valued their roles. It made me wonder what other secrets my brother might be hiding. It took about an hour to get everything sorted. I called security to escort me out and verify what I was taking with me. I watched as both ladies placed the extra copies in their purses. My brother had left in a hurry without saying goodbye, likely trying to avoid the situation in his home. I later learned he arrived too late, as everyone saw our top 2 executive assistants escorting me out with the security personnel. With tears in their eyes, I kissed both ladies on the cheek and thanked them for their years of support. I took a single box from the security officer's hand as I left. As soon as I was outside, everyone wanted to know what was happening. The ladies explained as best they could. After opening the trunk, I threw the box in and closed it. On my way through town, I stopped at a real estate office and listed the house. I gave the representative my wife's cell phone number and instructed her that I would leave it up to my soon-to-be ex to decide the listing price. When I got home, I found that besides the personal belongings, only the bedroom furniture of our daughters had been taken. I shut off my cell phone and read through the divorce papers. The grounds were emotional and mental cruelty, and she was asking for primary custody of our daughters, Bayou and Bree, with supervised visitation for me once a month for 1 hour. Beth thought I was too strict because I didn't allow our daughters, aged 13 and 15, to date without chaperones. She felt I was outdated and that my views on morals and family were too restrictive. Beth believed that my approach to raising our daughters was stifling their personal development and mirrored the way her father had treated her. She was using our differing views on parenting as a reason for the divorce. I went to the liquor cabinet and poured myself a drink, flipping through channels but finding nothing suitable to distract me. It seemed I passed out from drinking, waking up with a hangover on the living room sofa still in my business suit. After undressing, showering and shaving, I made breakfast and went outside to do my usual Saturday chores. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I turned my cell phone back on and saw text messages from my mother, my brother, my wife and my 2 daughters, all trying to reach me. I suspected that my daughters were in on the situation and had agreed to go with their mother. The only message I trusted was from my mother. Once I had settled down and thought things over, the real estate agent called me. "Mr. Tate, your wife finally showed up this morning. She was quite upset to find that you're letting everything in the house go." I showed her comparable properties in the area, and she agreed to add $20,000 to the asking price because of the value of the furniture. "Thank you for informing me," I said. "I'd like it sold as soon as possible because the house holds too many memories." Just so you know, she broke down when she saw what was happening. She was shocked by your decision. I asked her what she expected. Ms. Waterston said, She left you for your brother and now you're selling the house. She expected you to take it as a given. She even mentioned demanding to be bought out of the family company. I responded, what choice did she leave me? Was I supposed to be content knowing that I'm just a victim of my brother's actions for the rest of my life? Ms. Waterston noted, it seems like Beth was not prepared for the extent of your reaction. Her face showed how taken aback she was. I told her she might be able to fool many people, but I know what's really going on, I added. Ms. Waterston mentioned she has an excellent divorce lawyer for you. She'll send you the contact details. I thanked her for her help and ended the call. As I refreshed my coffee, I saw my older sister's car pull into the driveway. I finished making my coffee and went to the front door to let her in. Mom must have called you after visiting John's place, I said. It's a long drive from their place, it must be important. Connie looked at me and said, I can't believe what they've done. Mom was devastated when she found Beth and your daughter setting up house at John's place. What are they thinking? I'm in shock too, I said, my eyes tearing up. I had no clue about how long this had been going on. From what Mom told me, it's been about 2 years. How could I have been so blind? I added, before we talk more, you should read the divorce paperwork to understand why she's requesting the divorce. I just made a fresh pot of coffee. I'll get you some and then we can discuss it. Connie read through the paperwork, which detailed minor arguments exaggerated to an extreme. Beth wants you out of your daughter's lives, Connie noted. Most of what she claims is exaggerated, as we both know. Mom doesn't want you leaving the family business. I said so. Mom wants me to accept my brother's betrayal and remain in the company as if nothing happened. Is that it? I'm thankful to the real estate agent for highlighting this. Connie was visibly shocked. I can't believe what they've done. The stigma they're putting on you is appalling, the adultery, the breakup of your marriage, and their attempt to take away your kids. That's why I'm leaving the company, I said. No matter what deal is made, I'll always feel that my brother is mocking me for turning my family against me. He's taking what was mine because he lacked the courage to build his own family life. Your husband deals in business, Connie suggested. Perhaps he can help find someone to buy the company. Our brother has left you no choice but to cut him out of your life. Connie called her husband and explained the situation. After hanging up, she said, he'll have a team come in to appraise the company's market value on Monday morning. I'll also need to convince Mom that this is the best solution for everyone. I went to my home office, pulled out the last 5 years of financial records and set them in front of her. These are the corporation's financial statements and tax returns for the last 5 years. Your husband will need them. What about Boo and Bree? Connie asked. That will depend on what Judge Donald McDonald decides, I replied. I would have chosen Dale Britton, but he's currently tied up with a significant case and is not taking on new cases. Her lawyer is portraying a very unfavorable picture. Connie and I spoke for a few more minutes before she left to have a serious conversation with our mother. That night I couldn't sleep well. I was used to having my wife beside me. I decided that after meeting with the lawyer, I would leave town for a few days. I needed to separate myself from the situation to view it more rationally. Connie called me after she and Mom had a long chat with the pastor following Sunday service. The pastor said that the one who has been hurt the most may never fully recover. What they did was despicable but unfortunately quite common in today's society, where love and decency have lost their moral value. Love has become just a 4-letter word unless demonstrated through consistent actions. Mom was evidently surprised by the pastor's comments, especially when he said that James is not the first to have his life ruined by a family claiming to love him, and won't be the last. Mom agrees to put the whole business up for sale, Connie explained, not solely because of John's actions but because she understands that John would mismanage it without me. She wants to know who should take my place. I asked Connie if Mom understands that I have no choice but to consider my brother as good as dead to me. Yes, and I had to explain to Mom what a cuck means in societal terms and what that label implies, Connie said. Mom, who had always avoided strong language, expressed her anger by saying she would confront Beth if she ever saw her again. Tell Mom she needs to appoint Carl Robertson as president, I instructed. He was my second in command and knows everything I do. If she doesn't, John could override him and he would. The commercial side is crucial for us to get the best price for the company. This must be done properly. Connie asked if we should inform John in advance. I said no. If Mom feels she can't handle it, she will need to appoint you as CEO for a 1-year term or until the company is sold. You need to understand why I must stay out of this. My involvement could be used against me in the divorce court. Connie agreed to check with her husband to confirm my reasoning. She also mentioned that she had faxed him all the corporate information. About 2 hours later, Connie texted me that she was the new CEO and would follow my suggestions the next morning. While having brunch, I prepared pan fries with eggs and bacon when Beth called. This time I answered, "Can we talk?" Beth asked, "We just did." "If you or your lover contact me again, I will file harassment charges," I said. "Any remaining issues will be resolved in court." Beth tried to discuss our children Bree and Boo, and suggested working things out now that I was calmer. "We will sort this out on my terms, not yours," I replied coldly. "I will be going to court for paternity tests to confirm whether they are my children or my brothers. I believe everyone has the right to know the truth, and I will never return to anything involving him." Beth gasped in shock. "They are yours and you know it." "I believed I had a loving wife until I came home on Friday," I said. Clearly I was wrong. Given these new revelations, I must consider the possibility that I may not be their father. After all, John could have been involved with you for years and enjoying it while I was the one supporting the family. Beth started crying, but I felt no sympathy. I ended the call. On a hunch, I contacted my former executive assistant, Joanne. Her husband had gone through a difficult divorce himself years ago. "Sorry to bother you, but I could really use your husband's advice on what I'm about to face," I said. "Let me talk to David," she said. After a brief wait, she returned and said David was on his way. About half an hour later, David arrived. I let him read the divorce petition and walked him through everything that had happened since Friday. "Let's be clear," David said. "You do not have any concrete evidence of when the affair started, other than what you've heard from a third party." "That's correct," I confirmed. "In the court's eyes, this justifies requesting verification of the paternity before proceeding with anything else," David advised. "The way you discovered the affair suggests a deliberate long-term deception against you. Judge Donald McDonald will require biological proof before making any ruling. The judge is strict about relying on actual facts rather than personal beliefs or presentations of the facts." "Is the really that strict?" I asked. "Yes, it took me 6 months to finalize my divorce, and none of us were entirely happy with how it turned out," David explained. "But I can honestly say that when it was all over, his decision was the right one because he prioritized the needs of the children." I offered David a drink, and as we chatted about his relationship with Joe, we heard a truck pulling into the driveway. I stood up and looked up the living room window to see my brother John arriving. "I can't believe he has the nerve to show up here after everything he's done to me," I said. "I wish I had one of my dad's .22s, David muttered. "Sit down, I'll handle this. If you won't leave, I'll show him my badge." "I don't think he wants to deal with the Cape Girardeau police." David opened the front door and pulled the window down on the screen door so I could hear their conversation. John slammed his truck door in anger and shouted, "Where the hell is my stupid brother?" David responded, "We could sit down and work this out, but the a-hole won't listen. Now he's going to have to because I've got a few things to sort out with him right now. If he won't listen, I'll make him." John retorted, "Screw you, a-hole. Get the hell out of my way." "I left Beth in tears because he's questioning the paternity of his daughters," John said. "He needs to be set straight and I'm the one who's going to do it." David asked, "When did the affair start?" "About 5 years ago, if it's any of your business," John replied. "That's interesting," David said, showing his badge. "Beth told your mother yesterday that it was 2 years ago." David continued, "I have to question what the truth is because it's clear from your statements that both of you are trying to make the other look like a liar. It's apparent that James was expected to accept being deceived by both of you and continue as if nothing had happened. Was it your plan to gradually break him down and turn him into your personal submissive?" John was stunned and at a loss for words, revealing that neither he nor Beth had seriously addressed the situation with each other. David said, "I wonder what the judge will say when I present the recorded video of this conversation. I suggest you get back in your truck and prepare Beth for the paternity tests that are coming. Your explanations about your relationship lack credibility, and will likely be seen as attempts to defuse the situation. As John walked back to his truck, I realized that things were turning out much differently than they had planned. Once John drove away, David returned to the house. "What's your lawyer's name?" he asked. I provided him with her contact details and he said he would reach out to her on Monday and send her a copy of the recording. "Why did you bring your police cam?" I asked. "It's standard practice in domestic situations," David explained. "When Joan told me you wanted to talk, I knew anything could happen, so I came prepared." I told David that I planned to leave town after seeing the lawyer. "I think it's best to stay out of the area for a while due to what's coming up." "Is it anything the police might need to be called about?" David asked. "Our older sister has been appointed CEO of the family company this morning," I disclosed. "Tomorrow she will appoint Carl Robertson as president. He was my second in command and Joan, who has worked closely with him, will likely become his executive assistant. The current president, John, will be demoted to vice president. This is happening because our mother doesn't want John ruining what my father and I built before she finds a buyer." David agreed with my reasoning. "If I were you, I'd be packed and ready to leave right after the lawyer appointment. John will be furious when he sees it's all you're doing. From what I know about your brother, he's hot-headed and reacts without thinking. People like that are capable of anything." After David left, I cleaned up the kitchen, then went to Ace Hardware and bought a new lock set for